There are friendships that shape you quietly over decades. And then there are those that fundamentally alter the trajectory of your entire life. For Tom Selleck, the legendary actor who captured the hearts of millions as the mustached, Ferrari-driving private investigator Thomas Magnum, his friendship with the late, great James Garner belongs firmly in the second category. Now, at the age of 80, Selleck has finally decided to speak with raw honesty about the man who meant more to him than perhaps any other figure in Hollywood. What he has to say is both deeply personal and surprisingly moving, a tribute long overdue from one television giant to another. Tom Selleck was born on January 29, 1945, in Detroit, Michigan, and raised in Sherman Oaks, California, a sun-drenched suburb of Los Angeles, where the dream of stardom floated in the air like the scent of orange blossoms. Growing up, Selleck was not the kid dreaming of red carpets and award shows. He was the tall, athletic teenager obsessed with basketball, the kind of young man whose natural gifts on the court made a sports career seem like the most logical path forward. He earned a basketball scholarship to the University of Southern California, where he studied business administration while playing for the USC Trojans. Acting was, by all accounts, an afterthought. Then a drama coach noticed something in him, a magnetism, a presence, the kind of quality that cameras simply love, and encouraged him to explore performing. A few classes and some early commercial appearances later, including a memorable run of Pepsi advertisements in the 1960s, and the course of Tom Selleck's life changed forever. The early years were not glamorous. Like most actors trying to break through in Hollywood, Selleck spent the better part of the 1960s and 1970s grinding through guest appearances on television shows, picking up experience wherever he could find it. He was learning the craft slowly, methodically, the way serious artists do. And it was during this period of slow, steady ascent that he first crossed paths with James Garner, an encounter that would prove to be one of the most consequential of his life. But before we explore that relationship, it is worth understanding just how large James Garner loomed over the landscape of American television and film, because without that context, the depth of Selleck's admiration is difficult to fully appreciate. James Garner was, quite simply, one of the most naturally gifted actors Hollywood ever produced. He first captivated the nation as Brett Maverick in the late 1950s television series Maverick, a Western that subverted the conventions of the genre by giving audiences a hero who was charming, funny, and refreshingly reluctant to resort to violence. Garner brought an ease and an authenticity to the role that seemed almost effortless, though anyone who knew him understood that this ease was the product of genuine talent and hard-won experience. He went on to deliver memorable performances in films like The Great Escape and the Americanization of Emily before returning to television in the 1970s as private investigator Jim Rockford in the Rockford Files, a role that cemented his place in the pantheon of television legends. To a generation of actors and viewers alike, Garner represented the gold standard of American masculinity on screen. Tough but not brutal, funny but not shallow, and always real. For Tom Selleck, watching Garner work was an education that no acting school could replicate. Selleck has shared over the years that his admiration for Garner dated back to his childhood, to those afternoons in front of the television, set watching Maverick and feeling something indefinable, a sense that this was what great acting looked like when it came from a place of genuine humanity rather than calculated performance. When Selleck eventually landed the role of Thomas Magnum in Magnum P.I. in 1980, a role that would make him one of the most recognizable faces on the planet, he carried those early impressions of Garner with him onto the set. He had modeled something of his own approach, the warmth, the humor, the accessibility of Thomas Magnum, on the lessons Garner had demonstrated so brilliantly as Jim Rockford. The opportunity to work alongside Garner, when it eventually came, was one Selleck has described as both thrilling and terrifying. He had built Garner up in his mind for so many years that meeting him as a peer felt almost surreal. What Selleck found, however, was not the intimidating icon he had feared, but rather a man of extraordinary warmth and generosity. Garner, by all accounts from those who worked with him, had no tolerance for the pretension and pettiness that so often infected Hollywood sets. He treated everyone, from the most senior director to the newest production assistant, with the same fundamental human dignity. Selleck watched this and was moved by it in a way that clearly stayed with him. In an industry notorious for its ego and its hierarchies, Garner's decency stood out like a beacon. What Selleck has been reluctant to say publicly until now, perhaps because the sentiment feels almost too large and too personal for a celebrity interview, is the extent to which Garner genuinely shaped him as both an actor and a man. It went far beyond professional admiration. Garner became, in Selleck's own words, a sounding board, a confidant, and a friend at a time when the pressures of sudden, enormous fame could have easily swallowed him whole. Magnum P.I. was a phenomenon. The show ran for 8 seasons, earned Selleck an Emmy and a Golden Globe, and turned him into one of the biggest stars in the world. With that level of success came temptations and pressures that most people will never experience. The temptation to believe your own publicity, the pressure to chase every opportunity regardless of whether it aligned with your values, the constant risk of losing yourself in the persona the public had created for you. Garner, who had navigated his own version of these waters and done so with his integrity conspicuously intact, offered Selleck something invaluable: perspective. He warned him about the corrosive effects of ego. He counseled him about the importance of protecting his private life. He reminded him, with the gentle authority of someone who had learned these lessons the hard way, that no professional achievement was worth the cost of your character. These were not abstract, philosophical lectures. They were practical human conversations between two men who genuinely liked and respected each other. The kind of talks that happen over coffee between scenes or during long drives between locations. Yet their impact on Selleck was profound and lasting. Perhaps the most personal truth Selleck shares now, at this reflective stage of his life, concerns the way Garner's example influenced his decisions about family. Garner was famously devoted to his wife, Lois Clark, whom he married in 1956 after a whirlwind courtship. Their marriage lasted nearly 6 decades, until Garner's death in 2014, and was by all accounts a genuine partnership built on love and mutual support rather than the Hollywood fiction of romance. Selleck, who married his wife Jilly Mack in 1987 after meeting her during a production of Cats in London, has built a similar kind of marriage, one grounded in genuine partnership, privacy, and shared values rather than public performance. The couple has a daughter, Hannah, born in 1988, who went on to become a successful competitive equestrian, choosing a life of discipline and passion far from the Hollywood spotlight. Selleck has spoken before about his deliberate choice to prioritize his family over his career at key moments, including his decision to step away from the relentless pace of Magnum P.I. to spend more meaningful time with Jilly and Hannah on their 60-acre avocado ranch in the Hidden Valley area near Thousand Oaks, California. What he has not said as explicitly until now is how much of that choice was rooted in Garner's example. Watching Garner build a life of authentic love and stability while maintaining one of the great careers in American entertainment showed Selleck that these things were not mutually exclusive. You did not have to sacrifice your family on the altar of fame. You did not have to choose between being a great actor and being a present, devoted husband and father. Garner proved it was possible to be both, and Selleck made it his quiet mission to follow that path. There is a melancholy dimension to all of this, of course, because James Garner is no longer here. He passed away on July 19, 2014, at the age of 86, at his home in Brentwood, California. His death was mourned by fans around the world and by colleagues across the full breadth of the entertainment industry. But for Selleck, the loss was something more intimate and more painful than the passing of a beloved public figure. He lost a friend, a mentor, and a moral compass. The kind of presence in your life that you never fully appreciate until it is gone, no matter how much you valued it while it was there. Now at 80, Selleck finds himself at a stage of life where the urge to account for things honestly and openly is stronger than any residual impulse toward discretion. He has had a career of extraordinary longevity and variety, from Magnum P.I. through beloved films like 3 Men and a Baby and Quigley Down Under, to his current long-running role as Frank Reagan, the dignified patriarch of a New York law enforcement family in Blue Bloods, which he has anchored since 2010. He has built a life that most people would consider a genuine model of how to navigate extraordinary success with grace and groundedness. And he knows, with a clarity that age brings, that a meaningful part of the credit for that belongs to James Garner. What Selleck wants people to understand, finally and fully, is that Garner was not simply a professional influence or a career mentor. He was one of the primary architects of the man Tom Selleck chose to become. The lessons Garner taught, by word and far more powerfully by example, about humility, about decency, about the irreplaceable value of treating every human being with respect. These are lessons that Selleck has carried into every set he has walked onto, every interview he has given, and every morning he has spent working the land on his ranch rather than preening in front of a mirror. Garner showed him that the measure of a man in Hollywood had nothing to do with the size of your billing or the size of your trailer. It had everything to do with the size of your character. At 80, with a long view available only to those who have truly lived, Tom Selleck can say with certainty that the friendship of James Garner was one of the great gifts of his life. It is a truth he perhaps should have spoken more loudly and more often over the decades. But then again, some truths take a lifetime to fully understand before they can be properly expressed. In finally giving voice to this one, Selleck offers something valuable not just as a personal tribute to a man he loved and admired, but as a reminder to anyone listening that the people who shape us most profoundly are not always the ones who make the biggest noise in our lives. Sometimes they are the ones who speak quietly, lead by example, and trust that the lessons will take root in their own time. For Tom Selleck, those lessons did take root deeply and permanently. And James Garner deserves to be remembered not only as one of the finest actors America ever produced, but as the kind of human being who made those around him genuinely better. That, in the end, may be the most enduring legacy of all. Like, subscribe, and follow for more.